CFB Paint back for another episode. This time we're at week 5 review and recap. We are going to do our rapid round, but first we have to decide in order of who would survive the longest in the wilderness. And we did a little preliminary chat on this, but opening up the discussion, anyone want to throw their hat in the ring as who would survive? Like I don't know if we're doing like a plane crash scenario or if it's like a survivor, naked and afraid, alone type deal. So maybe we need to find some rules here, but
Let's go with
this will be interesting. Alone, okay. And I'm not even that familiar with that program.
So some basic tools that you can work with. Basically, with Alone, it's like you pick like 10 out of however many, but you're not, drop naked with no materials and making stuff out of sticks. You might have a knife or you might have a net or something. For context for everyone listening, we've got 3 Eagle Scouts here. That doesn't mean we're survival experts, but it does mean that we're at least familiar with some of the dangers and things to stay away from, like cuts and infection. My knee-jerk reaction is Corey being someone who likes survival reality TV a lot. Might have a lot more experience of seeing what people do stupid that Steve and I might fall into as novices. I also mentioned to Steve off air, politely, I don't quite have the fat reserve, so if our food collecting ability is all the same, I think I'm the first one out. So I'm very confident in myself, but I don't think I'm that much better of a survivalist that I'm really going to be able to out hunt. Maybe if I'm lucky, outfish. But that's really my only hope. I think I might come in third on this one, though.
See, I'm worried more so, like, right, we don't have training. None of us have training, so we'd be kind of winging it, whatever. But, like, would my mentality be good enough to go? Am I mentally strong enough? I like to think that I am, but in reality, my kids get under my nerves all the time, and so the wilderness would get under my nerves so fast. I think I'd be like, if I knew there was a way out, I might pull the plug quick. But if I'm on TV and I'm like, oh, I'll be embarrassed, and the Heather will disown me, I wouldn't pull the plug nearly as fast.
Yeah, pride's quite a motivator in that sort of situation.
I'm like, all right, just sit here. Who cares? Yes, I'm being gnawed on by a copperhead. Whatever. I'd rather die than have go home.
That's the one thing I think I have up my sleeve is I think the mentally tough part of me is my edge. I feel okay on my survival skills. Again, to me it's largely dependent on where. You drop me in the Alaskan wilderness and I am not going to last very long. You put me on a desert island, I feel like I'm going to do great. You put me in like an island. Again, I lived in the Samoan Islands. Like, put me in the South Pacific with nothing but like a machete in my hands. Game over. Like I would thrive.
So Steve's ready for Survivor is what he's telling us.
Yeah, I was going to say, again, it depends on the location. You put me in like some sort of rainforest and it's a different story. So, that's the part where it's hard. So I probably put myself, I don't know if I'd put myself ahead of either of you either. That's the hard thing. I think this is a close one.
So with our wives' permissions, during this next, summer, whatever, we need to figure this out and have
sort it out.
Oh, we got to put it to the test. Next year, we'll be able to do one of these to go, who actually made it the longest?
Bryan's still not here because he died or he left out.
Nobody heard my radio and the Bears were coming. No, I feel like I can confidently put myself third in this one. I don't think any of us would do extremely well. I do think, Steve, you're right on your mental toughness, especially with like your wrestling background. Like, to me, that's a sport where a lot of it is like, all right, this sucks right now, but I can deal with sucks, And, soccer, I'm like, this sucks. I got to start beating that guy. It's kind of how it goes.
I also think it matters like how well you can sleep. Can you sleep like Mike Bear, where you sleep anywhere and all the time, or at the drop of a hat, or do you sleep like my wife does? And if anything, sounding gets made, she's gone. I'm the person I feel like I can sleep anywhere. She's like gone. But.
All right, I'll take third. I'll let you guys duke it out for the best survivalist.
Oh, all right. The first person goes first.
I guess you get to choose.
Okay, I'm gonna have you go first.
Okay. My rapid round. We had a close game with Georgia and Auburn. Not that Auburn looked super impressive, but Georgia didn't either. But we're still waiting a little bit in this season to have big upsets in the year. We've had some upset wins. Ole Miss beats LSU this week. Clemson gets beat week 1 by Duke. But for how vulnerable a lot of the top 10 teams look, like a USC or a Florida State or teams who've, played things a little bit too close at times, or Michigan or Penn State who have started slow in games, they've, ended up getting the job done pretty notably. But I'm still waiting on the big upset or upsets to occur. So it's been fun already, but it's now at this point I'm starting to get a little antsy. It's like I want things to shake up in a major way. I don't want the same teams being in the top 7, top 8 week in, week out. I'm ready to see, Maryland take down Ohio State next week or something big happen.
Yeah, I second you, Bryan. I want to see some craziness. We've seen some susceptibility in close games pretty much by every single person on the board. Nobody's blown out and impressed us. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I think the most well-rounded team right now that would be Texas, potentially.
Agreed.
But I want to see some upsets. I want to see some crazy stuff. That being said, I did enjoy this week because there were some fun games, like games that just didn't go the way you expected them to go. Games that kind of were a little bit more closer. They were high-scoring games, which is what I had an issue with last week or a few weeks ago when it was like, these are good teams, but they're all scoring like a few points. No, these teams put points on the board and made it fun and a little crazy. A lot of blocked extra points, punch return for touchdowns that kind of made the game. So, good week.
All right. My rapid reaction is Wild Wild West, specifically the SEC West. Who is going to win that? Like, it's now I think it's anyone's game. I would have written Texas A&M off. Now I'm like, I'm not so sure. The other teams will look a little shaky too. LSU's not out of it, but they've got flaws. 55 points given up to Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they've already got one loss, but it's to Bama, and they don't have to play Bama again. So, I got 4 or 5 teams that I'm just like, on the right day with the right bounces of the ball could probably walk away with the division crown. So I'm excited to see that one continue to play out.
Yeah, and Bama's got an interesting matchup in A&M coming up. And the fact that they're 127th nationally in sacks allowed, and Texas A&M's 6th in sacks that they produce. So this is going to be an interesting matchup with those two teams. I think you're right. Oh, yeah. Who wins the SEC West? We're only 2 games or 1 game in, depending on who you are.
And I think there's only 2 teams you can really count out. I think it's not Mississippi State, not Arkansas. Anything else is on the table.
Exactly.
So if you have to put a gun to your head and money where your mouth is, who do you pick right now?
Texas A&M.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go to. I was like, I hate to say it, but I hate to say it. Just I hate. This is going to age poorly. I'm sure.
Me. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but if you think about who they have to play still, LSU has a bad secondary, and I think they can exploit it.
Yep.
Ole Miss, not good on the back end, and I think they can exploit it. So you beat those 2, you get some help with Bama.
Yeah.
Again, you can beat Bama. If you beat Bama, you can take care of that. That's the one where, maybe this is a spoiler alert. I'm a little surprised Bama's only 2.5-point favorites. That's the one that I think. I don't know. But right now, I think if you're an Aggie fan, you gotta be feeling kind of good, which is weird. Yeah. There's a lot of football to still be played, but
my money's on Bama. I worry about LSU the most for that team. So, that team, I think is going to lose to LSU. So, they can't exploit that bad defense as much.
Sorry, you're saying that LSU's going to lose to Bama, or Bama's going to lose to LSU?
I'm saying Bama's going to lose to LSU, but I think Bama still wins the West.
Interesting. All right.
We'll see.
Yeah. And I reserve the right to change my mind with more information.
Exactly.
At this juncture, I think A&M, which is weird because they're playing with their backup QB for the rest of the year. Okay.
Who looks way more effective, right?
Yeah.
He looks
Max
really
Johnson's good. Always been a decent QB. He's always been a good quarterback. So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I guess there's our rapid round. Thanks for giving us some thoughts. Let's look at kind of the whole weekend. So we'll go ahead and recap. And I don't know if we don't quite have these in chronological order. Some of them are, I think, but others aren't.
Mostly not.
If we want to move some of the midweek. No, it's good. Let's go. Maybe let's go. Yeah, just in the list that we got them. So Texas 40, Kansas 14. this game, I think in our previews, we kind of just, I don't know if anyone touched this game. I sure didn't. I was like, I have no idea. This could be close. This could be a blowout. Like,
we also didn't know whether Jalen Daniels was going to start or play in the game, and he didn't. And their backup, Jason Bean, did not look good. I mean, I think he had 9 completions in the entire game.
That's right.
It was not good. But this is where you see, like, I've been skeptical of Sarkisian. I feel like he loses you a game that he's not supposed to win. But he has this team taking care of business when they're supposed to take care of business. They had a one flounder where they flirted with disaster with Wyoming and then kind of blew them out in the fourth quarter. But, like, there's not another team, in my opinion, that's dominated their teams that as well as Texas has. I mean, this team can pass. They've got a quarterback. They've got receivers. They can run the ball. They've got a great running back. They got multiple great running backs, actually. But I'm terrified to play this team if I'm anybody. And I think the biggest hiccup biggest challenge they have left on their schedule is next week against Oklahoma. So.
Yeah, I did take Kansas to cover the spread. I was thinking Jalen Daniels would be playing, and it was a wide spread. I think it was 22.5 at open. So I thought, safely we can get close here. And really, I think 40-14 is. This game was close points wise for a minute, but Kansas never looked threatening. I was at first following this game. I didn't watch it live at the time. Went back and watched, and I was like, oh, they were never moving the ball. This was never going to be one where Kansas was going to be able to pull out the victory. Ultimately, like, the quality shows through in the end. But I do just wonder a bit, like, if you had a little bit better play from Kansas, just like slightly, are you able to spook them earlier? If you get like an extra touchdown, something to just get the nerves in there a bit. Once a team starts to think, oh no, is this team really doing this? Then that can provide a window that isn't normally there. But Kansas just never had that edge in this game, and Texas, did what they do and followed through, ran up the points, stopped the points coming in, and it's going to take somebody jumping on them early or somebody like Oklahoma to stop them, because right now they are really running really well.
Yeah, I referenced a stat last week about, like, the average 25 top 25 team versus their schedule and how many points they would overscore everybody. Oklahoma still leads that, but Texas is a close second or third. So it's kind of going to be an interesting game to watch this next week when they both overly, they score more points than the expected top 25 team against their opponents. So, and OU's defense is top rated based off of what they've done. So it's kind of interesting watching the analysis going. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll get more answers on both those teams this next week. Pumped for that one. Another early Saturday game was the USC Colorado game. I know that this is one that probably well, actually, I don't know your opinions on this. We didn't talk about this before we started. Bryan, you mentioned you wanted to give some thoughts on this. Take me through it.
Yeah, nothing crazy. UFC jumps out to a huge start to the point where most people have probably switched channels and go, okay, this is a foregone conclusion. And then, myself among them. And Colorado kind of comes storming back. When I say storming back, it still didn't feel like they were ever going to get there. I know they end up within 7 points, and there's a little bit of dressing it up to look a little bit better than it was. But this is another scenario of USC not finishing the game. They get out to a lead, but they don't kill it. And that's the opposite of what we're seeing with Texas is when Texas gets a hold of the game, it's over. They end it. They finish it. They don't give you any more breathing room. USC does not do that. And this wasn't with backups in. This wasn't like it was garbage time the whole time, like it was most of the second half that Colorado started storming back. It was just such a hill to climb at that point. But you just are waiting for the axe to fall for USC, where they come against the team that has a little bit more power, and they let them hang around, and eventually that clock goes, and that ball is shaped weird. It bounces funny, and sometimes it goes the other team's way. And you feel like there's got to be a team outside of Oregon, Washington, outside of like the upper tier of the Pac-12, who's going to have a real shot in last play of the game to beat USC because of it, because they're just not putting teams away. The defense just needs to figure themselves out.
Changed that game at all, Bryan?
That's a great question, because you wonder how much is the team relaxing after they get out to that lead. Is there any element of that where they lose the momentum and then they realize, oh, we can't regain it, but would they still jump out to the same lead? It's super possible that with Travis Hunter on there, they're not able to jump out to quite the same lead, and it does feel like Colorado's got a chance to bring it back. It's impossible for me to say no, he doesn't impact the result, because he at worst would be like the third best player on the field, like I would say in the stadium, like probably second best player. So I think he impacts it. It's hard to say though if he flips. Is he worth 8 points right there?
Yeah. My other thing that I'm like realizing is like I don't think this USC team makes the playoffs, which I kind of would have said in the beginning. Like they just don't have a defense to make the playoffs. So they're going to get beat by the Pac-12 is just too loaded with good offenses, and they have yet to play one, to be honest. But like once they start playing these good offenses, they're gonna fall at least to one person, probably multiple people, and I don't see them winning the Pac-12.
Yeah, I was imagining them in the playoff, and I was watching other games this week, and I said, forget the playoff. If they played Ole Miss, I think they're losing, because Ole Miss is just gonna score 60, and that's hard to outscore. You can't expect Caleb Williams to be perfect the whole time. He's a great player, but you outscoring everybody every week while you're leaving the gates fully open on defense is not a super sustainable strategy. You've got to have some limiting factor back there, and they have shown very little.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen a team do that, win a national title or even compete for a national title that didn't have a okay defense.
You've got some interesting challenges looking ahead for the Southern Cal. This week, they're at home against the Arizona Wildcats. I'm higher on Arizona than I think anyone is. So,
well, I mean, after Washington, we should all be a little bit higher, right?
Yeah, I think their backup QB might actually be better than their starter. So it wouldn't stun me if Jaden DeLora gets Wally pipped in Tucson. We'll see. But so they have that one. Again, it's at home. If it was in the desert, I'd feel even better about the chances of that game getting a little wild. But the next week at Notre Dame. What would you say?
I was just repeating you. Crazy things happen in the desert.
Oh, they do. And I'm so disappointed that like USC, Washington, Oregon, and UCLA all now avoid going to like night trips in the desert in October and November because wild things happen. The Big 12's about to find out.
But you talked about Notre Dame. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Notre Dame, who has a defense, a really good one. And so
the question is
you're going to
on the board.
Well, if let me put it this way, if San Jose State can score 28, and if Arizona State can score 28, I think Notre Dame can score 28.
I imagine so.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just to me, I draw more conclusions from USC in this game with Colorado than I do about Colorado. Like, props to them, they kept fighting. To me, that's kind of just like, oh, we'll make it look pretty. Like I don't give Colorado a ton of credit for that comeback. Again, I think they're light years ahead of where anyone would have expected them to be. I think they're probably a 6 or maybe even a 7-win team if things go their way. So I'm not throwing shade so much as it's just like, okay, you kept fighting. I'll tip my cap to you for that. But yeah, it's kind of like a lot of people are raising eyebrows and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but at that Washington result. But it's like Arizona never once had the ball with the chance to take a lead except for the very opening possession of the game. I guess maybe technically their second possession if you go for 2 and go up 8-7. Like, so like people are making a big deal out of that Washington game. I'm not. And that's the same thing here with Colorado's effort. Like, good for them. It to me is more concerning that USC wasn't able to keep a bit more distance between them as they jumped out to an early lead and just kind of eased up.
Yeah, this year's USC feels oddly to me a lot like last year's UNC, where we've got the offensive firepower and then we're just not going to stop anyone, and we've got the elite quarterback play who's going to make it through a lot. Of course, their positional play I should say their skill position play is better than, well, I don't know, better. UNC had some really good position players last year, but they feel much more like last year's UNC than last year's USC. I think they're going to run into more trouble than they did.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Going on to a game that was much more close throughout the game, I should say. Georgia 27, Auburn 20. Corey shaking his head. Talk to me.
What could have been. I'm glad it didn't happen to some degree because there were a lot of good recruits in Auburn for that game. Some Florida State recruit commits in particular, and I'm like, I'm not happy about that. But honestly, like, Brock Bowers single-handedly brought this team back. I don't know what Auburn's thinking with their defense. He's wide open over and over and over again. I don't know why you're not double covering him. Who else are they going to throw it to right now? Like, there's nobody that's proved anything. I think the next closest receiver has 4 receptions, and the next one has 2. And then he has, 9. It's just, you got to lock him up. He's their best player by far on offense from an offensive weapon standpoint. So lock him up. I don't care if you get run, you allow the run to go. You put a linebacker underneath and a safety over the top. You play man-to-man against the other people and make Carson Beck beat you. Don't let Brock Bowers beat you. And if they'd done that, I think they would have won this game. I love the reliance that they have on the quarterback run within this game. And kind of it made Georgia's defense kind of struggle. Like, do we guard the run? Do we guard the pass? I think they had, between the two quarterbacks, I think they ran for, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was I think it's 100 yards between the two quarterbacks. I think it might be 130.
Yeah, I believe Peyton Thorne had one of his best running days of his career.
Yeah.
He was not a runner at Michigan State, and they bring in a separate quarterback specifically to do the running at Auburn, but still, he ran all over Georgia. Josh Pate had the tweet of the week for me with Brock Bowers is the best team in the country.
I saw that.
Because he absolutely was. He when it came down to it, they needed some elite play, and he had times where he was, wide TF open, but he had some plays where he's just snatching the ball one-handed and doing ridiculous stuff. And that's what you get with the best tight end in the country. But they really needed him, and this just looks bad for Georgia going forward. Like, I get that the quarterback run was a big part of this, but the run game as a whole was okay. Auburn had, I think, 88 yards through the air. You're going up against another team pretty soon here, this next week, who likes to run and didn't throw a whole lot against Florida. You've got to figure out a little bit more there. And Kentucky's defense, I think, is going to be better than Auburn's. I'm not sure of that, but I like them scheme-wise for this matchup. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't know. It gives a lot of questions to Georgia. I really wish we had that Oklahoma game this year that I didn't get rescheduled, because that would have given us a lot of light onto who is this Georgia team, because now I think we're more curious than ever.
Are they giving, and it's not the same attitude, so I don't want to compare the teams in terms of just attitude, but they're giving me lots of 2014 FSU vibes in terms of we're going to flirt with disaster and we're going to pull it out the fire at the very end. Well, not even at the very end, but just they'll be able to win. What?
They did the same thing last year.
Georgia
flirted with disaster all last year and didn't play until the second half and kind of played with their food. What I'm more interested in or surprised about is you haven't played anybody, right? So it's okay, everybody could have been and this is what I thought was going to be the narrative. It was all right, you don't really care, you're not up for it. But this is the oldest rivalry in the Old South, or longest rivalry in the Old South, whatever it is.
The Deep South's oldest rivalry.
Yeah. You can tell, obviously, I don't give a shit. Anyways. This would have been an opportunity to make a statement saying, oh, yeah, we may be moving around, but we are a team that means business, and we are going to win a national title. And that didn't happen. They didn't look great. So you go and check it back at last year's stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, you can see some the Kent State was a little bit surprising, but Kent State also has 3 or 4 transfer wide receivers that are all playing at much higher levels of ball now. Obviously, the Missouri game was the one that came to mind. Yeah, where they win 26-22. But the rest of their schedule: Oregon 49-3, of course. Out at South Carolina 48-7. Auburn 42-10. That was at home. Vanderbilt 55-0, Florida 42-20. That was close at halftime with some turnovers.
And that's why I felt there was a lot of games
efforts, rather. Yeah.
last year.
All right, fair. I just feel like this year they're facing tests seemingly every week, and it just kind of gives me like back to 2014 Florida State, where it's like, hey, bro, is this the week that we're gonna lose because we're not on our P's and Q's like we should be? Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Auburn had the right thing, or had the right kind of game plan for it. They also were aided by 2 turnovers right at midfield, so they got a couple of short fields that helped. But I sure didn't have a Peyton Thorne 62-yard run on my bingo card, so that was pretty interesting. Just like, oh, kid's got some wheels. Yeah. So from a fairly low scoring affair, 27-20, hit the under cash. So boom, nailed that one. To a very high scoring, in fact, the most high scoring game this season thus far in Division I FBS football. Ole Miss 55, LSU 49. I had eyes on this one. Bryan, I think you also were able to catch some of this game. Did you have any reaction, response?
To me, it's just the sieve defensively that LSU is. Both of them obviously let up a ton of points, and it's just kind of a shootout, a matter of who's going to trip up the one time that matters. Obviously, there are more than one time that a team didn't score a touchdown going down the field, but this defense for LSU, specifically a secondary, you've got some injuries there that don't help, but it wasn't good to start with. And any team that has a competent quarterback and wide receiving group, like, they've got a good shot to beat you, even though you might be able to dominate one line, if not both. They just have nothing on the back end, and that Jackson Dart just absolutely ate today. Judkins had a good game as well. They finally got him going, because I had been critical of Ole Miss, and I still came away from this going, I still don't think Ole Miss is that good, but clearly they're better than I thought they were, and LSU is just vulnerable as can be, and that's just really interesting to watch with some of the elite talent and players that they have in certain spots. Their holes are really gaping, and that's just like there's no papering over at this point, and it's not something that they can, they need to get healthy fast, and they need to figure out something to where they are putting a lot more bodies in the back end, because you don't have the quality to overwhelm you. So you really need that. To me, this was a surprising one. I thought LSU was going to win and win easily, but credit to Kiffin, credit to Jackson Dart having a good game. Ole Miss jumped all over them and stayed with it to the end. They finally started to slip, and LSU took the lead, and I was thinking, okay, here's where it turns, but they kept with them, got the crucial stop. You have the Ramos missed field goal, and then that's it. As soon as you're getting close to the last drive, you're probably going to win this one with the way it's been going.
That being said, I don't know why Ole Miss scored on that last drive. Like, you left time on the clock, you could have just got down at the 1, the 5, and then ran the clock out and hit your field goal.
I agree. I think that was poorly managed. But that's one of those things where, I think if he had a coach in his ear when he's on the sideline, the coach would be yelling at him. But that, tough to get a player not to score a touchdown when they can.
Yeah, I don't remember how many timeouts LSU had, but still.
Yeah, and I think you actually saw Lane Kiffin talk to, I forget which receiver it was that scores, but I think he talked to him after he did and said, hey, in this situation, we want you to dive at the 2. But even then, I don't know, college kickers, I might take the points when I get them.
And that's my conundrum. Like, how much do I trust my kicker versus, you never know if I can punch it in and guarantee it.
Yeah, it's always going to be, a little bit difficult to manage that. To me, the thing that's surprising about LSU is we I think noted this in our preseason, that their secondary was kind of cobbled together once again out of the transfer portal. I think what made me sort of dismissive of it was that I expected their defensive front to be better against the pass. And even still, 39 passing attempts for Jackson Dart. And as far as passing plays versus run play, they did not register a sack in this game. LSU didn't. So 39 pass attempts for Jackson Dart, 39 dropbacks. So there was probably actually a few more dropbacks if he ran some. I don't have those kinds of stats in front of me. 40 rushes, really balanced from Ole Miss, but 39 attempts, and Harold Perkins, 9 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. I mean, I'm going to just jump into like major speculation here, but he's not being utilized like he was. And it's the same defensive staff. Like what's going on there is the thing that I'm interested. I haven't like done a deep dive on like their film, but it just doesn't feel like he's impacting games like he was last year. So I'll be interested to see if they make any changes. This game maybe is the catalyst. They're now a 2-loss team, 1 loss in conference. The margin for error for LSU, if they want a chance at the SEC championship, basically 0 now. The playoff, I think, is gone unless you have some real chaos take place. I don't know. That's the one that's interesting to me. If he feels that he's not being utilized, are there changes on that staff that maybe make him stay, or does he consider hopping in the portal? He was committed to A&M at one point. They're leading, like you said. They're doing a great job getting after the quarterback, and that would be another weapon for them. I'm like way over my skis when it comes to just speculating wildly and perhaps irresponsibly, but I don't know. That's just a little bit of stream of consciousness for me. The other thing that I had on that game that I thought was surprising, I felt like LSU. I mean, I'm a little surprised that not just in the last possession, but the possession prior to that, there's just some interesting calls. So they end up their last 2 drives, and first one ends in a punt, and the second one ends with the clock running out on the game. But on that first play, so they Ole Miss scores a touchdown to bring it within 2 points, right? So it's 49-47. LSU is leading. They get the ball with 5 minutes left. Pass complete to Mason Taylor for 22 yards. Then they decide to try and tackle some clock after they do that. So at the 47, Jaden Daniels runs. It's a design QB run. Logan Diggs runs. And then they take their own timeout. And I'm going to forget how this played out. Maybe they took it after the entire play clock had ran down to try and get it right. And then 3rd and 5, they one of few defensive plays in the game. Ole Miss sacks Jaden Daniels. But it just was really interesting that they were like, okay, now we can go to work on the clock when they have not run the football particularly well all season. And I guess in this game they were, they had a couple of like Logan Diggs runs for 100 yards, but most of their rushing, Jaden Daniels runs for 99 yards and a touchdown, and with a long of 55. So it's like their average rush, if you take that out, I'm trying to do some math in my head real quick, but if you take that rush out, they're not running the football successfully. I'm a little surprised they weren't a little more aggressive in terms of trying to get first downs via the pass rather than running the ball and draining the clock. Like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of criticism to be passed around. I mean, normally you'd think 49 is enough to win a game, so maybe that's kind of what Brian Kelly was like. I think if we can just run the clock out here, we're good. But I don't know if you've had any evidence really this year that says like, oh yeah, we can just run the football whenever we want to. No, LSU. So
the other thing, like a 4-yard completion is as good as running the ball. And potentially 4-yard completion goes for 12. So that to me, it's just go with what has worked. You've got the talent on the outside. You can. They're going to be wanting to prevent anything from going long, so you're going to have some room to throw. I don't know.
Dance with the one that brung you.
Exactly.
All right, we'll move on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Both of their losses, they have not had a sack yet.
That's crazy. They didn't sack Florida State. Interesting.
No, Jordan Travis was happy to throw up jump balls for their middle linebackers instead of take a sack.
Well, yeah, that's true. All right.
Doesn't matter.
We will go from offensive explosion back down to a little bit more of a defensive struggle. Here we go. Notre Dame, Duke. This one, it looks like Corey, you watched this one. I can take the lead however you want to play it.
And then I'll jump in.
All right. So I picked up this one at halftime. I can't remember what I was doing before that, but I picked it up at halftime. Notre Dame is up. Are they up 13-0 at that point in the game?
Yes.
I want to say that's right. Yeah, and really it was just kind of like, all right, this is gonna go just like lots of Notre Dame games in the last 2 years under Marcus Freeman, where they're the physically superior team. They're going to just kind of, all right, we're going to get a lead. We'll sit on it. We'll drain the clock. We'll get out of here with our win. Riley Leonard, man, that guy is fun to watch. Creates some magic. He's a really gifted runner, and orchestrates a couple of drives for them to take the lead. And it's funny because I was thinking at the time I was trying to catch up, just looking at ESPN, looking at this game cast and trying to get a sense of what had happened. And I knew it was a 13 score lead is not safe. Like that is, and in fact, I think we talked about this before, but I'm going to quickly just side tangent real quick. The second I have a 2-score lead, I am doing whatever it takes to make it a 3-score lead. And I don't care if I leave it at a 2-score lead in my attempt to do that, right? There's no way I'm kicking a field goal up 10-0, is what I'm saying. At third down, I'm telling my offensive coordinator, hey, you got 2 tries for this one, so get us half of it. And we're going for it because 13 isn't safe. It's just one of those numbers where it's like, those 3 points don't do me much except for make it so I can kick a field goal if they take the lead on me. I can kick a field goal and perhaps retake it if they're up 14-13. So, again, my own coaching philosophy for my non-existent football coaching career, but that's just one that is now just a rule in my head. I don't kick field goals when I'm up 10, and even I don't know if I love kicking field goals when I'm up 7. I might just be like, I don't know. I'm starting to have disdain for field goals, but I can at least see that, right? It's 2 possessions. Like that makes sense to me, but going from up 2 scores to up 2 scores but higher 2 scores to me doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go back and find all the times where that's bit teams because it's happened a bunch. So that was to me a little bit curious. Again, I still have not watched that first half, so I don't know the circumstances. Maybe it was like a 4th and 16, and so it's like there's really nothing we can do but kick it. So maybe I'm prejudging a little bit there on Marcus Freeman in the Notre Dame coaching staff, but man, this game got interesting. There's 3 plays that to me defined the game in totality. Riley Leonard escapes for I don't have the stats in front of me, a really long run down the sideline. Duke ends up punching it in to take the lead in the 4th quarter. Things are getting really interesting, and they have Notre Dame on the ropes. And there's an insane conversion. Did you guys see that? Sam Hartman convert, what was it, 4th and 16? And man, that was just fun because Hartman, not really known for his running. He's not a statue. He's no Peyton Manning. He can move, but it's just not. He is very much a pass first QB, and Duke's defense played that the initial play great. The play breaks down. Sam Hartman, not Sam Martin. I don't know where that came from. Sam Hartman is flushed to his right, continues to look downfield, and then sees enough space and says, I'm going for it, takes off, barrels to the line. I just love the wild abandon that he just charged through right where he needed to be because there was contact basically right at the line. Maybe he was a little bit beyond it, but just man, giving it all for your team. I was just really impressed with that. I mean, obviously, he's a 5-6 year veteran, so maybe I shouldn't be surprised at that, but a huge play to keep the drive going. I think after that, Duke's defense was a little shell-shocked, a little rattled, and it was a couple plays later that they give up a long run for a touchdown. And then finally, the game-defining play is the sack and the strip sack fumble of Riley Leonard. Still no specific word. I think people suspect it's a high ankle sprain and that he'll be out multiple weeks. But we'll see what happens.
A high sprain.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if they'd ever said officially that, but apparently not a season-ending injury. My wife and I were watching that. We were both sick. We were just like, oh no, because he's just so fun to watch. I mean, last year you got to see him truck Miami defenders right and left. This year nearly led Duke to 2, I would think, and I'm not a Duke football historian, but that would have been probably the two best home wins of a single season in Duke history, right? Like, it's got to be close.
Yeah.
It's certainly in the last 30 years. Like, man, I'm hurting because I don't know what Duke is going to do moving forward.
Yeah.
Because I just love that team. They are fun to watch. If you watch them this year, they're a fun team to watch. They play hard, they hit hard, they cover well. They're a great defense. I feel like they've taken on the mentality of their coach. So the one thing I know that they won't do is they won't shrink, right? They may not be as talented or as, I mean, they're down. They'll be playing with an arm tied behind their back, basically, without Leonard at quarterback. But they're gonna fight still. Like, so. Anyway, all that to say, an impressive game. I feel like Marcus Freeman needed this one. I feel like if he had lost this one, the criticism would grow louder. Things would get pretty interesting there in South Bend. So good one for him to quiet the haters for a couple weeks. Southern Cal comes to town, and that'll be another adventure there. But sorry, I've been rambling for a while. I just really like that game. It was a really fun game. If you like defensive struggles, which I'm okay with, provided plays are being made and people are actually, pads are popping. This was a fun one. Corey, what was your take on it?
Yeah, I'm a Duke fan. I enjoyed this game. You talked about how it was handled. Notre Dame goes down and scores right away, and then Duke has an interception like two drives later, and Notre Dame isn't able to move the ball past there, and then like they actually lose 4 yards, so it's like 4th and 14, so they get the field goal. And then for the rest of the half, they can't move the ball. They're down 10-0 at halftime. And then they move the ball about 40 yards this time. And they like get in field goal range, but it's 4th and 8. It's like, all right, we haven't been in field goal range. No one's really been in field goal range this whole game. I think there's been a missed field goal by Duke earlier in the game. So like 13, like getting points were at a premium. So I can understand kind of getting points when they're at a premium. But still, I felt like Duke had a chance to win this game. Riley Leonard storms back. They rely on his legs in there, and he makes some great plays. Sam Hartman pulls out his inner Riley Leonard and runs for 16 yards, convert that first down, which is kind of insane. I'm frustrated with Duke's defense in that perspective. Everybody has their back turned to the quarterback. I'm like, it's 4th and 16, cover 2, but like have your be facing the quarterback. Like drop into that zone, keep everybody in front of you, and then the second he starts to run, you have 16 yards to catch up. Go get him. But I'm annoyed with that play call. And then also, Notre Dame goes in and scores. I don't know why they went in and scored. Should have gone down at the 1 yard line again and won the game. You gave Riley Leonard a chance. Thankfully, for Notre Dame's sake, you sack him and end up rolling his ankle. I watched that over and over again to make sure it wasn't broken. And like by the third time I watch it, I'm like, okay, that's going to be sprained. That's not going to be break. In my expert doctor opinion.
See, I can't rewatch them. It makes my stomach turn. I'm just like, oh, no.
You have enough broken bones yourself, you can kind of be like, oh yeah, that probably wasn't break. But like, so I saw it, I was like, oh, I don't think it's broken. But we'll see how it goes. We got to look at Duke's future schedule. They have a bye week this next week, so they're in good shape. They then play versus NC State at home. That NC State team hasn't looking super great, so.
MJ Morris, they made the change at QB. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
So is that the end of the Louisville game?
What?
Was that the end of the Louisville
game? They
just
announced it. I don't know if he got pulled or if they just announced it. I didn't catch that NC State Louisville game. But they announced it today that MJ Morris is their starting quarterback going forward. So
we'll see.
Swing and a miss for me on Brennan Armstrong.
I believe Elko is good enough to defensive coach that they can probably keep themselves inside the game. And that's on the 14th. And then you play Florida State on the 21st, which is like that. From what I've heard, talks, it's like 3 weeks is about when you would kind of expect them to come back. For Florida State's sake, I hope you don't, because Florida State struggles with running quarterbacks, and they're going to face another one this next week in Virginia Tech's running quarterback who played phenomenal last week. And then go against Riley Leonard. Not a person I want to go against, to be honest. I do think this is interesting because I thought in my head you had like Louisville and Duke, Miami, UNC like had a chance to win go to the ACC championship along with Florida State. Does this pull Duke back a little bit? Then Is Louisville still free after that 13-10 squeak by NC State the other day? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, to me, this is just the Mike Elko Big Ten coaching audition. Can I coach in the Big Ten? Yes, this is Big Ten football. This is, it might have been ACC and independent, but this was Big Ten football that was being played. And there's going to be some jobs that'll pay good money. They'll be looking for somebody of his expertise, I think, potentially. I'd love to see that Ryler come back
this time, but maybe a little less.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see how much Michigan State's willing to go. But to me, I'd love to see Ryan Leonard back soon, because if he can come back and he can be healthy, they can compete with anybody on the rest of their schedule. And that, that would be a bummer to see what they've done this season already. We see the quality team that they are, and to see them, go on 4 losses or something like that would be a shame. So hoping that they can stick things out, and hoping a quick recovery for Leonard.
Same. I did not get eyes on the Tennessee-South Carolina game. Brian, you did. Takeaways.
Yeah, I might have been the only one for us. You did. Takeaways. These are 2 not very good teams who are playing. Joe Milton, really poor in this game. They win 40. They score 41 points. He has a touchdown. He has 2 interceptions, and they are bad, ugly. I don't know what you were looking at interceptions. Really, really, really brutal. You also needed some pretty big plays by wide receivers on the long shots, because that's been what's missing in the early part of the season. Last year with Hendon Hooker, you had that long ball where we're able to run the ball most of the game, control things, and then over the top, we've just got a Cannon and Hyatt who you've got to chase. Milton hasn't been able to hit on those, and he hit on those in this game, but a lot of good plays made by Squirrel Wright and Brew McCoy before McCoy got hurt. Squirrel Wright in particular had a really, really nice one, but the running game came along really well for Tennessee this game. They have their 3-headed dragon running. They got Small, Wright, and I'm going to forget the third name. It might come to me in a bit, but excellent running game, and that's really what sustained him this game, because Milton just looks... He kind of looks like a one-read pony, where there's a lot of times where the play call will have him immediately pump fake somewhere, but then he's looking at where he really wants to go. So if it's not an immediate throw or immediate look, whatever, wherever he's looking in the, I'd say, 0.2 seconds after he's caught the ball, that's where he's going. And South Carolina cued in on it. Fortunately for Tennessee, South Carolina didn't have what it takes to score with them to stop that defense. But these are, I don't know. Tennessee's still ranked, but there's a chance that they get beat down pretty bad in a game that might surprise you somewhere in the season.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard from a couple different outlets. Yeah, like, the Tennessee ground game got going, and I'm like, is that a function of you playing South Carolina though? Like, so
it's hard to say. They have got a little bit healthier on the O-line since like the Florida game where they were dominated, but South Carolina's bad on the D-line, so it's impossible to measure at this point.
Yeah, so I guess the jury's still out there. That's yeah, I don't know how Tennessee's still ranked. I don't trust them.
They don't look like a ranked team.
Yeah, I don't trust them.
I'll tell you about SEC. That's it.
That's exactly how.
Well, when you're preseason ranked, it takes pretty high. It takes a couple losses for people to catch on.
Sometimes
tell you who I do trust. Oregon State, Jonathan Smith. Did you guys see him do the milk the clock thing? Oh my gosh! So I am at the BYU game, and every media timeout, all that stuff, I'm pulling up the Oregon State Utah game. My wife and I are kind of just keeping tabs on it. Again, BYU alumni love watching Utah lose. Utah's a really awesome program. I got a lot of respect for them. I do root for them to lose. It's one of those where it's it was, I think, gosh, I'm going to get the timing of this wrong because I'm jumping between games that whole time. I'm changing context. But at one point, I was like, yeah, Oregon State's going to win this game. The one thing they can't do is throw the football to Utah, which then I say that. My wife goes to the bathroom in the stadium. I'm out there waiting, and sure enough, DJU throws it to Utah, which they score off of that turnover, if memory serves me right. But I think it's right after that. It's like, hey, just every second of that game. Jonathan Swiss doing the milk thing. That is our next game to break down. Oregon State's a really good physical football team, right? If you get them into a shootout, you have a really good chance of winning. So the teams on their schedule that can score points, Washington State's already shown it. Washington, Oregon, I don't know if they play USC. If they play USC, that has that potential as well. But outside of those, if you can't score 40 or 50 points and throw the football really effectively, you're in trouble. If you're a run-based team, Oregon State's their game for that. That plays right into their hands. And Utah, especially with a backup QB, just didn't have answers for him. And frankly, it wasn't a super competitive game. As I was watching it, I was like, I don't know if I really need to watch the rest of this one. I'm going to watch it because I like watching Utah lose, like I said.
And the backup QB gets benched in that game. They bring up the third stringer, and he's playing okay until he gets hurt, and then they have to bring backup back in.
You're talking about Nate Johnson, or are you talking about?
So Nate Johnson was the starter last week and this week. He's the one that plays majority. Then they bench him for Barnes. Barnes comes in and plays, like 15 plays or something like that, and then gets hurt. And so that Nate Johnson has to go back out there. To his credit, he does throw like a 40-something yard touchdown after that, but or maybe not touchdown, but 40-yard pass. But
and Barnes looks to be out for a while. I think the rest of the season.
It's going to
be if I'm remembering right. So
unless the bye week they finally get Cam Rising come through.
Yeah, that's the thing is if Rising doesn't come back, this is what it'll be against the elite competition in the Pac-12. Oregon State's a different type of team, but I think it'll be the same result regardless.
I think they have a bye week this week, right, though? And so, like, you have one more week to kind of get him. He's been practicing with the team, just hasn't been cleared by the doctors. And then once he gets cleared.
They have, the number of starting players that are currently out with injuries in Utah is staggering. So for those Utah fans, I know that's got to be just super frustrating to know that we're actually even better than what we've played so far. And up until this last week, we're undefeated, having to deal with those challenges. But good luck to them moving forward. We'll have to see. The schedule doesn't get easier, and we'll have to see what happens there. Like, speaking of potent rushing attacks, though, we've got a game that to me was very surprising. If you'll remember from last week, I had Florida plus 2.5 to win the game. I thought they would win outright. I wanted the points. I was going to need those points and 19 more, actually, to be precise. Florida loses in Lexington to Kentucky 33-14. Man, this was just stunning to me. I don't know if there was a more surprising result, just not just what the number was. Like, I saw when Kentucky first went up 16-0, and I was like, oh, that's surprising. And then I looked at the stats, and then I was like, I have to go watch the game because I don't even have his name in front of me. Gosh, I'm ill prepared here.
Ray Davis.
Ray Davis. I was gonna say I know his last name's Davis. Man, my guy went off. Like,
the crazy part is last week he had like 78 yards on like 19 carries. He was not effective last week, and then this week he is just ripping them off. And it was like
Superman.
Yeah, and he hits 175-yarder, but it's not like he wasn't hitting like 30, 40, 20, 19, 18, 17-yard runs consistently. Like, it was weird to watch. And, like, Devin Leary wasn't playing well either. I think he has, like...
He's 9 of 19.
Okay, I was going to say, I think he had 9 completions. Like, and this game was never in doubt. I watched a few Florida podcasters, and they are not happy with Napier's third down calling.
Offensively or defensively?
From an offensive perspective, which is kind of interesting, saying that like they put us in a predicament, but like that's not Graham Mertz's strong point. Like if you go back, it's like 3rd and 14, 3rd and 13, 3rd and 18, 3rd and 17. Like it's a lot of long downs and distances, and then you have like 3rd and 9, 3rd and 4, 3rd and whatever. Like it is not. If you average that, it's probably 3rd and 12. But it's an interesting thing to me. Like Ray Davis is the story to talk about. I mean, 280 yards on the ground, 9 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns, carries that team, makes the game not close. But then also, like, what Florida doesn't do in that game is weird to me. Like, Graham Mertz in that game, I think I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think he only has like 6 incompletions in that entire game. Like, Graham Mertz this entire year. Huh?
He plays a pretty good game. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing to me is you have 2 pretty talented running backs who you have not been able to get going. Like, this game, they did nothing. And that's at least a lot of those long, because Graham Mertz, you don't want to put him in a position to throw long on, long second downs, long third downs. But if you can't run the ball, you can't consistently get to those 2nd and 6s and those 3rd and 4s where you're in a comfortable range. So Mertz, I think, had a decent day. I mean, by all means, not a bad performance, but just no balance that you're able to strike. They tried running it plenty. They didn't abandon the run. It's just never happening for them.
Yeah, and even when they have those 3rd down and 12s, when they did throw, it was like they threw 9 yards instead of 12 yards. I was looking at Graham Mertz. I was trying to figure out what is going on with this Florida team a little bit. Like, and you look at the rushing attack. They struggled this game a little bit, but they haven't struggled the whole year. They've done okay in the rushing attack, but they aren't blowing you away in the rushing attack. They aren't blowing away in the passing game. Graham Mertz he's 109 for 138. He's completing 79% of his passes this year. Like that. What else do you ask from him? The dude, if you go back the last 4 years, last year he was a 57% completion. The year before that, he was 59, 61, and then we're not going to count that time when he threw 10 passes. But, like, 79% completion rate. He's not turning the ball over. He's 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but his average yards per attempt is only 8 yards per attempt.
Like, that was my question.
Ball down the field, and so people are able to crowd the line and guard the pass, and it's been a huge detriment to them. I think that's really why this Florida team hasn't been successful is you can't stretch the field with any reliability. And so teams can just drop everybody in and be like, you know what? We'll put 8 in the box and we can still cover the 4-yard pass anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
It feels like he's covering the roulette table with one chip on every single number. So he's right more often than he's not, but he's losing money. If that makes sense. Like, it's where you're right. Where he's being within the offense, he's doing well. But like to me, and I don't know if this is the scheme or if it's Graham Mertz himself, he doesn't deserve a whole lot of criticism, but like, man, I'll take a 65% completion rate if you push the ball down the field and complete 25% of those. Like, yeah. And they give us a couple of explosives and potentially a touchdown or two. Like,
and that's my question: is Billy Napier doing this, or is it Graham Mertz just taking the checkdowns and not taking the actual plays? They got to figure it out.
Yeah, fair question. They got to figure it out. Yeah.
They will lose a lot of games if they don't figure this out.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Florida moving forward, it doesn't get easier. They still have Missouri, who's currently undefeated on the schedule, Georgia, Florida State, and they don't do well on the road, which is really surprising. Like, they're really poor on the road.
Oh, I want to find that stat that I had. I think they're like
1-13 in their last.
Yeah.
Is it 1-13 in their last 14?
It's rough.
It goes back to the Dan Mullen, so it's not all Billy Napier, but like they're really bad on the road. I think Napier himself is 1-7 on the road.
That is insane. Oh, okay, I found it. Last 17 games, 2-15.
On the road?
On the road.
Sheesh.
Whether that be a neutral site or
start putting that in granite, put that in stone. When the Gators come to town, we win.
Yep.
All right, we'll go on. I think this one will be quick. I don't know if anyone else watched the Washington-Arizona game. Yeah, Pac-12 Network will do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there are YouTube shortened versions of it that exist. Again, it's not the entire game. It's just like a condensed version with most critical plays and stuff. So that's all I got eyes on. Yeah, I think this is much ado about nothing. I kind of talked about it earlier, so I won't spend a ton of time on this. Like, Washington, again, was never in threat of losing that game. The only time Arizona had the opportunity to take the lead was in the first possession. So I don't know. You talked about Josh Pate having the tweet of the weekend. I thought he had the worst take of the weekend with his reaction show where he said, "Yeah, Georgia lost by 7, or Georgia only won by 7, but Washington also only won by 7." I was like, there are two different ways to win a
different.
game by 7 points, and ask USC the same thing. Like, was that outcome ever in doubt with USC? No, Colorado never had the ball with the opportunity to actually tie the game or take a lead. Like that to me is kind of nonsense. But yeah, so Washington, to me, when you're going to the desert, the name of the game is winning it, right? Like, I don't care how ugly it is, just win it. And I thought they looked fine in that game. Really, what this was to me was, hey, Arizona, again, I think they may have found a quarterback, which also I want to do some research on his height. Like, his name is Noah Fifita. He was the high school quarterback and teammate of Tetairoa McMillan. So he was kind of a big part of helping him kind of come to Arizona. But as a recruit, he was listed at 5'7". On Arizona's actual official roster, he's now 5'11". So I'm curious, like, it seems a little late for a growth spurt. Not impossible, but and also out there, I was like, maybe he looks taller than 5'7". He doesn't look quite that short. So I don't know if he's got some, like, I don't know what they call those shoes, the ones, the lifts or whatever, or maybe he's just grown. But he looked really sharp throwing the football. He's and was a really accurate passer in high school out of Servite in Anaheim. And so I was bullish on Arizona. I think I like him better, frankly, than Delora. So we'll have to monitor that one going forward. But another opportunity for him to take a chance and maybe win the job. He played admirably. Now they go on the road, Southern Cal. So show me once again. He's got 2 NFL wide receivers in Cowing and McMillan. So they've got weapons, and obviously he's got tons of familiarity with McMillan. They played together in high school. So I don't know if anyone else had a comment on that. We can move quickly past that one. Washington's still looking like one or two of the, kind of the class of the Pac-12, maybe perhaps alongside with Oregon and maybe SC, but maybe not. Clemson 31, Syracuse 14. Corey, break it down for us. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, so I watched this game. Clemson, I feel like Cade Klubnik is basically, he's not a Trevor Lawrence. He's not a Deshaun Watson. He's more like a Taj Boyd. But he doesn't have a Sammy Watkins to throw to. He's got, like, okay receivers. I mean, their best receiver right now is, Tyler Brown, and he's had 14 catches. He's a true freshman. He had 14 catches in the last 2 games. But, like, he's a true freshman. And he's 5'8" or 5'9" or something like that. He's not a tall guy. So, like, this team's interesting. They don't have the quarterback that they need or the weapons to support that quarterback that they need to be a next-level team. This team should win the majority of its games, but if they drop one or two in the rest of the year, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't favored. The one thing that's kind of surprising me is running back situation. Will Shipley and Phil Maffa. Maffa's looked a lot better than Will Shipley. Like, I've got the numbers up here real quick. Will Maffa has 6.5 yards a carry. He's carried the ball 43 times this year for 4 touchdowns with a long of 49. Will Shipley is 4.9 yards a carry with 72 carries. Only has 2 touchdowns with a long of 19. Phil Maffa is the home run hitter. He's the better running back in my position, or my opinion, which is kind of interesting to see that, like, Will Shipley is kind of not being as effective as he has been in the past.
Well, I mean, can you include reception numbers in that? Because I think that's really the other part, that they complement each other quite well, because Phil Maffa is, again, perhaps the more physical runner.
Yeah, and
Shipley is the one that keeps you off balance because you got to account for him as a pass catcher.
Yeah.
And I can look into that a little bit, but he still is he used to rush for over 100 yards a lot of times too, so he's not doing that consistently. The one other thing though, I'm thinking that is this Clemson defense is good.
Yes.
They start this game off, honestly, they look like they were going to blow them out, and the offense kind of slowed down. But the defense never let Syracuse at all in this game. So 31-14 against the undefeated Syracuse. We all kind of knew it was not as good as their record kind of showed. But, hey, they won. They took care of business as it was expected, even more so.
Yeah, big bounce back game for Clemson. Yikes. Not out of the ACC race by any stretch. Well, I guess actually, sorry, it was confusing. They might be. Sorry, I just forgot about that Duke loss at the beginning. I was like, oh, they only have 1 conference loss. They can still turn this around. Well, 2 is going to be a little bit more difficult. I still would say Yeah, they'll need some help, but I'm not counting them out just yet. The last game we wanted to break down, I think it's mostly because 2/3 of us were at the game. BYU Cincinnati. Corey, I'll let you. I've got thoughts on it, but I'll let you take the lead here.
If I'm Kalani Sitake, if I'm Keaton Slovis, or if I'm Chase Roberts, I would have gone out and bought a lotto ticket that night because BYU did not look good. They were not winning that game except for on the scoreboard. Their offense couldn't move the ball besides the last play of the last drive of the quarter. They had only had 38 yards. Cincinnati couldn't finish. That was the biggest issue. Cincinnati was down to like the 30-yard line. But then even their interception for a touchdown is a blown coverage that ends up happening. Like the receivers, they do an interview with the cornerback, and the cornerback says, "Oh yeah, we're playing a man scheme, and I thought we were playing a zone scheme, so I hand off my receiver, my guy, and I stayed in my zone instead of following my guy like I was supposed to. The ball just happened to thrown to me, and so I took it for a touchdown." And then you also have Keaton Slovis, who dodges a linebacker and overthrows his target deep, and Cincinnati has a safety just sitting there waiting on the ball, and Chase Roberts comes in, plucks the ball, and just takes it in for the end zone. And they asked Chase and Keaton at the end of the game, was that on purpose? And both of them no.
Oh, they did it. Okay, I hadn't heard that, but I was just like, as soon as he threw it, I was like, uh-oh. And then Chase comes out of nowhere and scores. And yeah, Megan and I are both standing there. Everyone's cheering around us. We're a little bit behind the student section, so it's like a little bit louder and rowdier. And I was just like, no way he meant to do that. No way he meant to do that. I just kept saying, I was like, they were so lucky on that play.
I was sitting next to another guy, and we both turned to each other and were like, yeah, okay. And Chase didn't say anything, but Keaton at the end was like, yeah, that was, sometimes it just works out the way we need it to work out. It was very clear. It was not on purpose.
Well, and he has a history of overthrowing open guys. So I was like, he's definitely. I don't even remember who is the underneath route, but I was like, he's definitely thrown to him, and he just let it fly too far.
I think that might be what you do though as BYU. You run across her deep, and then you run across her even deeper and throw for the middle guy, and you might catch it on the second guy.
So, sorry, did you have any more on that? Okay, so it's funny. This game was just interesting. Again, if you're a college football, if you're not a BYU fan or a Cincinnati fan and you're listening to this, number one, props to you for not skipping through it. Two, you could go back and watch it. It's a pretty entertaining game, but going to that game, I hadn't watched Cincinnati play any football this year. I don't think I watched small pockets of them play Oklahoma last week. But as an FSU fan, I'm familiar with Emory Jones, I'm familiar with Xavier Henderson, and I'm familiar with Scott Satterfield when he was the head coach at Louisville. So driving to the game, my wife was like, what do you think is going to happen? I was like, well, Cincinnati is going to try and run the football, both with their backs and with their quarterback. This quarterback, if you make him throw the football, he can't do it. Or he can't do it consistently for sure. So if you can either get up and build a lead and make them have to throw more, you're in good hands. Or if for whatever reason you're just stopping the run and forcing lots of third and longs, you're going to be in good shape too. And I felt like I've never felt like, oh man, I have a game so nailed before, because I went and watched the game and it was just, that part was absolutely right. The other part that you kind of hit on, Corey, is at one point I leaned over and Meg and I were talking. I was like, it's weird. They're outplaying BYU down to down for the most part. They're outplaying them, but I've never once felt like this game was in jeopardy. Just this really strange game where it's that pick six to start was big. BYU's offense, again, very explosive and quite fortunate in a few areas to get some pretty big plays. I thought the play at halftime, or just right before the half, was really big. I am first, I don't know how people feel about seeing a game in the stadium, but I feel like I'm a savant when it comes to having a good in-stadium experience, because one, I pay attention to the media timeout guy. So I know okay, I don't need to stand through this whole break. It's going to be 3.5 minutes. I can take a break. I can sit down, recharge my legs. Two, I am always there's a timeout with 18 seconds left in the half. If they're not on, not threatening to score, I'm going to go down now, get in front of the lines for a bathroom concession, whatever it might be. And usually what I'll do is I'll just hang out at the gate and watch the watch it until it ends, and then I go straight to wherever I am. So just little things to make that in-stadium experience a little bit better. So we did that. Like, I think there was like 18 seconds left, and I was like, hey, they just took a timeout. Let's just slide out. We'll just hang out at the gate. So we watched it, and it was coming right at us. Except for, I guess, we were on the other corner of the end zone, but where our gate was slightly kind of in the middle of the end zone, but like maybe like 1/3 of the way from the south sideline, or from the west sideline rather. And so he scores in the, on like that southeast corner rather than the southwest corner where we were. But I think it just showed him like, hey, open up the offense, throw the ball a little bit more. I don't know how many Big 12 wins either of these teams garner. So I can't even remember whose article it was, so I can't give the appropriate credit. But the newcomers to the Big 12 are 1-7, with the only one win being BYU beating another newcomer in Cincinnati. So, so far, so bad for the new additions. Yeah, so that was just a really fun one. And I realized I skipped over one more that I had noted, but it just jumped right over it. UCF and Baylor. Did you guys go back and watch this? Oh my goodness, what a fun fourth quarter. That thing was wild. So just to quickly recap, Bryan, it didn't seem like you'd seen it, but like, so heading into the fourth quarter, UCF is up 35-10. They had a 35-7 lead with about 3 minutes left in the third, and they lose the game. Like, and the funny thing is, like, it's not like their offense stalls. Their offense like continues to move the football extremely well almost the entire game, with the exception of their last gasp, like try and retake the lead with a last second field goal. But everything else that you needed to have happen happens. Like, again, they stop themselves a bunch. You have a 3rd and 3, and the quarterback, who is the backup for UCF, their starting quarterback's out, but he had a great game. He was at one point was the starter of USF. He made the switch in that rivalry. So that's got a sting for the Bulls, but it was probably pretty sweet to see him cough this game up. But 3rd and 3 has a guy wide open for like an 18-yard gain, throws it 6 yards behind him. So like had exactly what you wanted for a 3rd down conversion. Doesn't get it. They punt. Baylor goes down and scores a touchdown. On the next drive, they move the ball. Like, I can't remember. It's a 72-yard fumble return for a touchdown, I think. Something like that. So they move the ball just right back, and I was like, as I'm watching it, I know the result because I've seen it before. So I was like, I just have to go and see how this plays out. And even then, I'm just like, what happens that they like? Because just I think they were averaging like 9 yards a play. They were just doing whatever they wanted to offensively, couldn't get out of their own way when it came to just one bad incompletion on a 3rd down. The next drive, they move the ball down the field. They get into a wildcat formation, and they fumble the exchange between the wildcat QB and the running back. Ball's on the ground. Defensive back picks it up, runs it back for another touchdown. Like, everything that you needed to have happen happened. I can't remember if there was another turnover. Man, it was just like I watched it last night, and I was like, this is the most insane thing, and it was just really fun. So if you haven't seen it and you're listening to this, go back and watch that. PSC Highlights has a really good like 10-minute video of it on YouTube, just kind of like all the major plays that contributed to that comeback. But yes, Baylor scores the final 29 points of the game.
You're not going to mention the 4th down conversion where he drops all the way back to the goal line?
Yeah, okay, and it seems like you've seen that, Bryan, based on your response to that. So yeah, an amazing play. Again, Timmy McClain's a pretty good player. I got to see him up close and personal when USF came to BYU a couple of years ago, and he's a good player, right? He's athletic. He's a pretty good quarterback. Again, some accuracy issues here and there throwing the football, but makes an insane play where he retreats back is he in the end zone? I think he's in the end zone for a little bit and converts an amazing 4th down to keep that drive going. It does end up stalling out, and their kicker doesn't have the leg to get the 58-yarder that they try. It doesn't get to, like, it bounces in the end zone, doesn't get to the goalposts, and even then I think it was gonna be right anyway. But man, that's a fun game. Probably pretty discouraging if you're UCF, because that one's a conference game that you look at and you're like, obviously should have won it, but I don't know how many others you can feel great about with your backup QB. Not saying that he's bad. Again, I think he's a pretty good player, but just knowing that you've got something better on the roster. Man, it was a fun one. That was all. It was just like, I love those types of stories where people don't give up, and the Baylor fans, to their credit, stuck around. Like, I mean, it's an away game, so like, where are you gonna go? But they were rewarded for sticking it out when it was pretty ugly through 3 quarters.
This is one of the things I liked about this week. There were comebacks and stuff like that. I mean, you have Virginia was up 17-0 against Boston College. Boston College comes back and wins 27-24. Utah State down 17-0 against UConn, and then they win 34-33 with a blocked PAT with 40 seconds left. Like, there's some just good games that happen like that this whole week. So
I mean, even Ole Miss is down 2 scores in the fourth quarter. Like, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love the game. You're right. You're never out of it. I mean, there are some that are out of it, but if you have that belief and you keep playing, who knows what can happen.
Yeah, this comeback win also is possibly one that saves Dave Aranda's job at Baylor. Without this win, you're 1-4 with your one win being against Long Island. You're now 2-3, and maybe it gets you there for a little bit longer. But if you lose this game, you immediately start passing out that collection plate and seeing what can we do. So I think this gives him another week, but he's got to get things rolling a little bit better in Baylor if he wants to stay there long term.
For sure. Who do they have this next week?
Texas Tech.
Ooh.
Two teams that want to win. Or that need to win.
Which Texas Tech team you get.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess do we have win totals draft recap this week, or is that still from last week?
I have it.
Okay. We can check in on it real quick, and then we'll wrap.
Do you want me to share?
Sure. Well, while you pull that up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Just a reminder for newer listeners, what we're talking about here with this win totals draft is ahead of the season. The four brothers all participated in a draft where you would draft teams and collectively add the total number of wins that those teams secure over the regular season. So each team plays 12. Total possible wins to be collected by each brother is 120. We're now 5 weeks plus a week 0 into the season, and Corey's going to show us our results. Again, sometimes this doesn't always. Oh, sorry, real quick. Sometimes this doesn't always show well on the YouTube, so we'll read it off for you. We know it can be a little bit of an eye chart, but there you go. Control plus. Good job, Corey. Go ahead, take over.
Yeah. So I'm in last after winning last year. I'm in last significantly. I'm at 36 wins. I had 4 teams on a bye this week, but I'm still only like a game less behind, or game less played than Mark, and then 2 games less played than Bryan, and 4 behind Steve. Steve and Mark are at 39 wins, and Bryan with a solid 8-0 week comes in at 42 wins. So I go 4-2, Steve goes 7-2, Mark goes 6-1, and Bryan goes 8-0. I actually saw a thing the other day that talked about people doing this in the NFL. You get 10 people and you draft all 30 teams, or you draft 30 teams between those 10 people. No, yeah, you draft
32.
Or however many people you have, draft
8 teams per person.
Huh?
8 teams per person for all 32.
Yeah, depending on how you do it, you draft about 30 teams, and the goal is to be either the highest winning team group or the lowest the losses. So you can trade teams as the season goes on. So if you're competing against people, you don't necessarily know if they're going for losses or for wins. That was an interesting idea. That's kind of what we have here. If we had more people, we could trade. Because there's some people I would like to get off my team. I mean, Coastal Carolina is rough, and Boise State are looking like 2 bad decisions for me. Boise State even more so. Although the poorest decision may be at the FAU one, Steve. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Conference USA can be a little bit more forgiving than their non-conference schedule. Which I went in thinking, okay, you're probably 1-3 in the non-con, just with playing Illinois, playing Ohio. Gosh, I'm gonna get this wrong. They didn't play Ohio. Did they play Ohio? Now I'm mixing up my teams here. They had a tough non-con, and I kind of knew that. I just mostly thought, all right, Casey Thompson, Tom Herman, band's getting back together, and it's at a lower level of football. They probably should do just fine. No, not so far. Obviously, Casey Thompson's out for the season. The one was like, man, if only I could pick up Mizzou on the waiver wire. or Kentucky. Mostly kidding about that, but it's interesting because I look at this and like, USC's 5-0. I still don't feel very good about that pick though. Like I'm nervous about it now.
And who
Oregon, I feel really good about Oregon. Penn State, I feel pretty good about that one. But that's really it. The rest of my teams, like Louisville's kind of likely to be 5-0. They're playing Notre Dame, so I got a little like Steve on Steve crime that's about to take place. Like, but I don't know. Like my team's okay. It's not going to be the embarrassing effort from last year, but some teams that are questionable at the best.
So you guys need to start deciding what my punishment is going to be. And unlike Steve, I'm not going to negate it.
Not gonna what?
Negate it. Be like, no, I'm not doing that one.
I can't remember what that one was. I was like, that one's a little too harsh. But...
Like you have to go to Olive Garden, and for every bowl of pasta you eat, you can decrease your time an hour, but you have to be there for 24 hours. And you're like, nope.
Well, it's not even open 24 hours. That doesn't even work. Like
that's why you better get it done, or you have to go back the next day. That's a lot of pasta to eat. That's way worse than the Waffle House.
And it's Olive Garden pasta.
Exactly. Top of the line.
You should also have thrown in the rule that you can't say no to any cheese. You got to just let them go.
That'd be brutal. But it'd help me in surviving the woods.
It would. It would enhance your chance. Well, we'd see. It might be a brutal little, a couple days there for you.
The one thing I have noticed is like we have 4 or 5. Everybody has 4 or 5 undefeated teams still on their list, so we did a good job of getting a lot of those. But there's still 4 teams that we didn't pick: Washington State, Kentucky, Missouri. I don't remember the other one off the top of my head. Let me look at my notes. Oh yeah, Marshall. So
we are.
So we missed a few of them. Brian, what do you think about your team?
Tennessee's the one that scares me. So I have Tennessee. That was my 3rd round pick, and getting into conference play, I'm going, okay, Kentucky, probably a loss. Alabama, probably a loss. Georgia, probably a loss. There's just a lot to go poorly there, potentially. They have some tools on offense, but they also have lost Brew McCoy for the season now. So those are being diminished as well. I feel really like I lucked into Fresno State in the 8th round. Boise State and Air Force were taken before in the Mountain West, and so that was on my big board. That was my 3rd highest team that I'd taken the Mountain West, and I was like, I'll set up for them. I think they should do well, and they're doing really, really well. James Madison has continued to show out for me, and then I just need to win some key games as the season goes on. I need Florida State to beat Miami to put some distance between me and Mark. I need Oklahoma to beat Texas. Would do the same. So there's some notable games for my bigger teams, but Tennessee is the one that I'm scared is the floor might fall out. Everyone else I'm feeling pretty good about. With I guess listing them out: Western Kentucky, SMU, Ohio, Toledo, Oklahoma, Michigan. I think I've named everyone there. So feeling good except for Tennessee.
Does any one of us have 2 playoff teams on their roster?
I might. Florida State might get in by virtue of the ACC's not great. I don't think they're a top 4 team in the country, but they're what you would have said were their biggest 2 hurdles going into the season. They've already played and won. Now we see, you've got to play Duke, and if Riley Leonard's there, that might be tough. Miami's a lot better than we anticipated. And Florida, who knows what you're getting from week to week, but it's still a rivalry game. So I think Florida State's a possibility, and then Michigan certainly number 2 in the country. They have been to the playoff each of the past couple seasons. They could be back.
Yeah, honestly,
I'm looking at it. Go ahead, Corey.
Texas, Brian could have 3.
Potentially. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing like, okay, Corey, Ohio State, Washington. That looks like a pretty good combo. Myself, I think it's probably Oregon. Penn State's the most likely. Again, I have USC. USC and Oregon are not both going to make it, or I have a hard time seeing that.
Yeah.
But Penn State to me is an outside shot. So like I'm probably the least likely. With Mark, you've got Georgia, Texas. That looks like a pretty good combo.
Very
like
strong.
You said, Bryan, Michigan, Florida State, and maybe Oklahoma. So I don't know. This will be fun. It's I think a tighter race right now through 5 weeks than it was last year when it was just abundantly clear that some of us drafted very, very poorly.
This year, it's me.
For those listening, I'm pointing at myself. But yeah, we'll have to see. Again, some head-to-head matchups will start to either put some distance or continue to close the gap for some of us, depending on results. So,
well, and a lot of us have cannibal games, except for Bryan doesn't have any of those because he's drafted in every outside of every.
Oh, he doesn't have a single time where his teams play.
I don't think he does.
I don't think I
amazing.
do. Oh, I had SMU Oklahoma. I think that was the last one. I think I had 2 overall, but I think they're in the past already.
Yeah, I have Ohio State, Maryland this upcoming week.
I've got Notre Dame, Louisville this week, and then later this year I've got USC and Oregon and Oregon State. That's the one thing that I might learn from this year's draft. It's like, you got to draft for value, but also consider like the baked-in losses that you're buying.
Yeah, exactly. So, cool.
All right, well, let's go to parting shots. Let's wrap it up, or keep this under 90 minutes, hopefully. And we'll go in the same order that we had this last week. Bryan, what do you got? Lay them on us.
I mean, I don't really have parting shots for this, but like LSU, your year 2 under Kelly. I know year 1 you were a little bit ahead of schedule, but like next year you're not going to have the same quarterback. Your defense has gone downhill, including returning the best defensive player in the country, or what we thought was the best defensive player in the country. What are the moves there? What are the things you need to do on the staff to reconvince people? Yeah, I'm the head coach of LSU long term. Obviously, he's got a long contract; he'll be there a while. But the way you felt 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago as an LSU fan, and the way you feel now are probably very, very different. And I think it's warranted the way that you're feeling now. It's you have no confidence that your team can stop anyone, and that means that any given week, regardless whether you feel like you're more talented, you might lose. So,
yeah, I would say they might want to try and portal their way out of it, but they kind of portaled their way into it.
Yeah. And Denver Harris, he was a big portal acquisition. They brought him in, then he went to the 3rd team. Now he's back on the field. Shows you're really just digging through whatever you got. It's an ugly situation.
Corey, hit us with your parting shots.
Did anybody see the blow up by Trent Dilfer on his assistant coach for not having the right amount of players on the field?
I heard that alluded to, but I have not seen it.
Trent, your team is not good enough for you to have that blow up. I mean, you are 1-4. Good night. But he looks like a little baby having a fit. I would be so embarrassed. I understand that it's a game. I understand that you need to chew a person out occasionally. But that looked like one of my 3-year-olds, to be honest, where they lost control. And he was just angry about it. And I get it. You were within 8 with Tulane. But we all knew you weren't going to win that game. So just whatever, dude.
Yeah, it'd be hard to sign up for coaching for him after watching that.
I don't know. People still work for Brian Kelly. Anyway, my parting shot was there's some defensive coordinators that are, I don't even know what the word is, but just looking for solutions, I think, is as diplomatic as I can put it. And it's just interesting how, like, to me, it's like Alex Grinch specifically has, years of his resume where he was awesome. Like, there's a reason he got hired at Oklahoma, is because they played mad defense at Washington State when he was their defensive coordinator. Part of that, I think, was personnel. There aren't that many Hercules Mata'afas in the world who didn't end up being like a superstar NFL player, but that guy was a game wrecker as a defensive tackle. Boy, that's a guy that go back and watch his highlights. They are fun. And it's just hard to have fun defensive tackle highlights sometimes just because the nature of the position is such. But Grinch, I mean, the Florida's defense, and now I'm blanking on his...
Austin Armstrong. I was going to say that.
Oh, have you guys seen the video? Like, okay, so when he was first... I'm gonna have a hard time saying this without laughing. Like when he's first introduced, he talks about like, here's what we're gonna run, and it just sounds like this word salad of football terms. But it's just like I can't even recreate it.
Toolbox. We're gonna have a tool shed. We're gonna be able to switch it up this on the front side, this on the back side. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's like it's cover 3 concepts and fire green concepts, and like just like every single like football word term. It was like Madden, like Ask Madden got like those like on a haywire for some reason. It just like starts just like word vomiting all of the different options for you to select defensively. And people have put that audio to like the highlights of Ray Davis, is that it? Yeah, Ray Davis just like running through them right and left and just like
and speaking of answers, they put 13 men on the field and still could something out.
Can't say he's not being creative.
That's right. The final one I was gonna throw out there with the defense. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on it now. Who's the other defensive coordinator? Yes, that was it. There we go. Matt House might need to be looking for a new house in a different town. It's I don't know if Baton Rouge is going to be the place he ends up long term. Yeah, I just the mismanagement of Harold Perkins is to me borderline fireable.
Yeah, so I was looking at some analysis on adjusted EPA for per play from a defensive perspective. LSU's almost dead last in the entire nation.
That ain't gonna do. All right, so for those defensive coordinators, tighten it up this week. We'll check in next week and see how they do. If there's nothing else, well, thank you for listening to the pod. Like, subscribe, share, all the good stuff. You can reach out to us, give us your thoughts on our analysis on the games, what you think is going to happen. It's at CFBPaint_ on X, CFBpaint@gmail.com if email is more your speed. And we will see you next time. Thanks for listening.